Standard 25A. I can analyze examples of how art, architecture, literature, music, and drama reflect the history of the cultures in which they are produced. So in the case of this standard for Unit 2, we're talking about Greece and Rome, specifically the cultures of Greece and Rome. So let's talk about Greece first. So for Greece, we have a couple of different examples of art, architecture, drama, etc., that really defined Greece culture. First, we have Greek sculptures. So Greek sculptures were very much focused on the human body and the form of a perfect human model, right? So they focused on muscles and physique, and they wanted everything to be a perfect reflection of what they thought the perfect human should be. So Greek sculpture reflected that love of the human body that the Greeks had. So then we have the columns. So the columns are an enormous feature of Greek architecture. Every building in Greece practically had columns, especially the Parthenon. The Parthenon was a temple that the Greeks built to honor their gods. This Parthenon is famous for being composed of enormous columns. Finally, we have drama and poetry. So drama, that is theater, was very important to the Greeks. They liked to put on plays and they liked to perform tragedies and comedies, and that was a big part of entertainment for the Greeks. In addition, they had poetry, the most famous of which is from Homer. He wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are two epic poems about the Trojan War and of Odysseus's struggle. So all of those together form this Greek culture and reflect the values that Greece had. So now let's talk about Rome. So the Romans had their own sculptures that were important to their culture, but their sculptures tended to reflect Greek sculptures in that they focused on the human physique and the human subject. However, architecture in Rome was very much unique to Rome. There were three significant details of architecture that defined Rome. The first was the arch. So the arch, the best example of the arch is in the Roman Colosseum, where you can see it lining the sides of that structure. The second characteristic was the dome. So the Pantheon is a good example of the Roman dome. On the roof of the Pantheon, which was a temple also built for their gods, is an enormous dome that sits on top. Amazing structure. And then finally, I mentioned the roads. So the roads are significant to Rome because they invented concrete so that their roads would last for years and years. And they created it so that their armies could move all throughout their expansive empire. So they built roads wherever they went. That's why it's significant to Roman history. Next, we have the aqueducts. So the aqueducts were a very unique technological innovation. The Romans invented this. Aqueducts are a structure that allows water to be transported from a source, like a spring or a river or something, or a lake, and transports that water to the city. Finally, we have mosaics. So a mosaic is when you take a bunch of little pieces of stone or colored ceramic and you lay them all out together so that when you step back, it actually forms a picture. When up close, it just looks like a bunch of little rocks. These mosaics tended to reflect like great victories of the Romans or great historical events. So they really valued showing off their prized history in that respect. So we have one example of how this standard can be used on a test. So for this question, there is an actual picture to reference, And the question is, the building above is a specific example of what culture's architectural design? So if you don't know what the name of this structure is, you can still figure out the answer to this question if you know what architectural designs are significant to each civilization. So in this image, you can see the significance here would be these archways. So you can see these archways here that line the walls of this structure. So even if you didn't know the name of the structure, you could still figure out the answer just by knowing which culture invented the arch. So let's look at the answer choices. A is Greece, B, Mesopotamia, C is Egypt, and D is Rome. Now the correct answer to this question is D, Rome. So if you knew what the name of the structure was, you'd know that it was the Roman Colosseum. This is where gladiators went to fight for the entertainment of the masses and the emperor. So the Roman Colosseum. If you knew that, you'd probably immediately know that it was Rome. If you didn't know that, you still could have figured it out by remembering that Rome was the one who invented the arches. And you can see that the arches are significant to this particular structure. But let's talk about why A, B, and C are incorrect. So in the case of A, Greece, the significant architectural design that came from Greece were the columns, right? The columns in the Parthenon were very significant to Greece. So if they were going to be showing a significant example on the test of Greek architecture, it would be columns. For B, Mesopotamia, we learned about the ziggurats in Mesopotamia. So those are those flat sort of pyramid platform things that the Mesopotamians or the Sumerians created as religious temples to their gods, right? So likely a Mesopotamian example would have been a ziggurat. In C, we have Egypt. Now the Egyptians were famous for the pyramids, right? The pyramids were the tombs where they would bury their mummified pharaohs with all of their wealth. So a likely example for Egypt would have been the pyramids. All of that in mind, the correct answer to this question is D, Rome.